Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So on today's episode, I'm going to be breaking down the brand new Bloomburrow Precons and letting you know what the best Precon is to buy. Well, in my opinion, and also applying incredible science, absolutely 5 different factors I'm going to be utilizing. I mean, at the end of the day, buy the Precon that you want to play, but I'm going to be giving you the most informed opinion that I can. So with all that said, let's jump into it. So my first category is, checking notes, Commander Power Potential. Okay, so with this, we're talking about the deck as it is with some slight adjustments, all right? You're not retooling the entire deck. When it comes to, well, the power of the deck, yeah, you can make like little adjustments, like if they don't have enough ramp in there, if they don't have removal in there, depending on your play group, some small adjustments, right? Not massive upgrades. So when it comes to that, let's start our way at the bottom and work our way to the top. My apologies, but Animated Army, you are the worst one. We're going to talk about the worst and go to the first. When it comes to these categories, it's going to be a point system. So this is 4 points. You want the least amount of points in a category. Bellow Bard of the Brambles. Yeah, your deck compared to the other ones, in my opinion, is a little bit lackluster. 3/3 Raccoon Bard for 3 mana in Gruul. During your turn, each non-equipment artifact and non-aura enchantment you control with mana value 4 or greater is a 4/4 elemental creature, in addition to other types, has indestructible haste, and whenever this creature is combined to a player, draw a card. The thing that is pretty limiting about this one, and we'll talk about the other commander here in a second as well, is that it is that mana value 4 or greater, so you do have to kind of really get things built over time, and that does take quite a bit of time to get to actually get a lot of value out of this. That being said, once you're set up, things are great, but this one probably takes the most to set up out of all the commanders out there in these Precons. And the deck support for it, there's only so many cards actually that do meet that requirement themselves. So yeah, the base structure of the deck isn't all that in tune with what this commander might want to do, in my opinion. Yeah, there could be some room for improvement, let's just say. Next up, when it comes to the backup commander, and my apologies, Moxfield doesn't have the English version right now, but it's a 6/6 trampling, I believe, Elemental Wolf for 5 mana in Gruul, and it basically says, enchantment spells you cast from your hand have Cascade. This one, in my opinion, is probably the better of the 2 commanders. That being said, when it comes to the actual support of the deck, it even has less support than the original commander does, because the original commander can focus on both artifacts and enchantments, whereas this one more so focuses on enchantments, and there's only so many enchantments in the deck. So because of all that, you are, Animated Army, getting 4th place in the Commander Power Potential. Next up, at 3rd place, we've got Family Matters. We've got Zinnia, Valley's Voice, a 1/3 Bird Bard for 3 mana in Jeskai with Flying. It gets +X+0, X a number of other creatures you control at base power 1. Creature spells you cast have Offspring 2. So this one essentially allows you to go tall with the commander and go wide with other creatures, taking advantage of creatures that have ETBs, triggered abilities, etc., getting a bunch of tokens in play. When it comes to the overall support for the deck, it's got some interesting things going on. It definitely does. It just has a bit less of a punch than the top 2 ones out there. It's getting there, but when it comes to the actual threat level of the cards, some of them are a little bit lower compared to the other 2, which have some pretty heavy hitters in them. When it comes to the backup commander, Arthur, Marigold Knight, I'm not sure if this one would actually be a better commander for the deck. I would not personally switch them out just at a base level. 4/5 Mouse Knight with haste for 5 mana in Jeskai. Whenever it and at least one other creature attack, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them on the battlefield tapped and attacking. Put the rest at the bottom of your library, random order. Return that creature to its own hand at the end of combat. This one is very specific on what it wants to do. I mean, if you were to build an entire deck around it, it would look very different than the deck that is currently there in the Precon, because, well, there's only so many ways to get this through. It's throwing itself into danger each time you're doing that. And also, there's only so many haymakers in the deck, and your top-end creatures aren't all that top-end. And, of course, you need ways to move to the top of your library. So when it comes to the actual power potential, I'm considering Zinnia as the face of the Commander Precon, which it is. But this is the one that I would say is more powerful with the way that the deck is built. Again, with minimal adjustments at 3rd place when it comes to the power potential. Next up, Ms. Bumbleflower. Now, This is a 1/5 Rabid Citizen with Vigilance for 4 mana and Bant, and it is Peace Offering. Sorry, I have to keep making sure I get the names of these right. Peace Offering is the name of this Precon. Vigilance, whenever you cast a spell, target opponent draws a card, put a counter on target creature, gains flying until end of turn. This is the second time this ability is resolved this turn, you draw 2 cards. Now, this one is very group huggy. We'll talk about something else here in a little bit and how it cannot be that. But when it comes to the base version of the deck, if you are utilizing this as the actual commander of the deck, get ready to give out a lot of value to another player or players. You might just focus on one and be like, try to team up with that player. But you might switch that over and, spread it around to whoever's most beneficial to you. So, this one can give you value throughout the game, but it is, again, a bit group huggy, and when it comes to group hug wins, there's only so many ways to do that. That being said, there are, I believe, 3 alternative win conditions in the deck, which is a decent amount, and there's a lot of heavy-hitting cards in this deck. This deck has a good amount of cards that kind of support what this wants to do a little bit, but also more so just are good threats in and of themselves. And that's why, actually, when it comes to the commander power potential of the Precon just out of the box with minor adjustments, I'd say switch off to Mr. Foxglove. Because this is not a group hug commander, and therefore doesn't need to be like super specific into that with what it does, so it can utilize those big heavy hitting cards a bit better in my opinion. 3/5 Fox Rogue with lifelink for 5 mana and Bant. Whenever it attacks, draw cards, you'll lead cards, the number of cards in defending player's hand minus some cards in your hand. If you didn't draw cards this way, you may put a creature card from your hand on the battlefield. So this one can be an absurdly good draw engine for you. I mean, just picture this, like you're at 1 card in your hand and opponent has 7. Cool, you just drew 6 cards just by attacking. Again, on attack doesn't have to get through. So keep that in mind. Even if you lose your commander because of that, that was probably worth drawing, the 6 cards or whatnot. And on some occasions, too, you might have a giant creature in your hand you don't want to pay for. Swing at a player that's got less cards than you. Cool. All of a sudden, you cheat that into play. So I would say just out of the box, it's probably more beneficial to switch off from the group hug commander, which is harder to kind of win with an out-of-box commander deck, versus like a Mr. Foxglove, which, again, can just give you value throughout the game while utilizing those Haymaker cards. So, overall, I'd say the Peace Offering deck finishes at second place when it comes to the commander power potential, which leaves, of course, squirreled away with Hazel of the Root Bloom. I always want to say Rot Bloom. 3/5 Squirrel Druid for 4 mana in Golgari. Tap, pay 2 life. Tap X untap tokens you control at X mana in any combination of colors. At the beginning of your end step, create a token that's a copy of target token you control. If that's a squirrel, instead create 2 token copies that are copies of it. This is a commander that is very simple, but very, very, very powerful in what it does. It gives you absurd amounts of mana. In this Precon, there is a good amount of support for this strategy of just get a lot of tokens out very quickly. Get a ton of tokens out, doesn't matter what they are. Again, could be creature tokens, could be other kinds of tokens. Just get them into play, tap them all, and all of a sudden you've got an incredible amount of mana and some big high-end cards that can be some great heavy hitters, some great finishers for you. So this is a commander that, again, is straightforward, but is one that can give you absurd amounts of value and just help you win through that. When it comes to the backup commander for this one, the Odd Acorn Gang, I would not personally be switching over to this. I think this is definitely a lesser version of the Commander Precon, just out of the box essentially. 5/5 Squirrel Warrior for 5 mana in Golgari. I mean, out of the box and just overall. Menace Trample Reach. Squirrels you control have tap target. Squirrel gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Whenever one or more squirrels you control deal combination to a player, draw a card. This one's more specific. It just is more specific in what it does and doesn't apply to all the different kinds of tokens that you're going to be making with the other cards in the deck. And yeah, it is kind of limited in what it wants to do. And also that sorcery speed thing. Again, Wizards, with Precons, you're always like, combat tricks have to be sorcery speed for some reason. Why? Regardless, that's not the point. The point is, overall, Hazel of the Root Bloom, I would say, is the commander that out of the box you're going to want to use. And the power potential of this Precon is the highest out of all of them. So again, scrolled away, you get 1 point. Which again, 1 point is better. We're playing like golf rules here, okay? You want less points. You get 1 point for the first category. Next up, when it comes to upgradability, I am talking about the potential that this deck has over time, which means, I mean, eventually decks can change, right? Decks can be fully torn down, essentially, like utilizing some of the parts, utilizing the commander, and then reinvent it. So Yeah, I would say personally that when it comes to full upgradability for a Precon, Animated Army is still in 4th place, unfortunately. I would say that the more powerful of the 2 commanders is actually this one, the Elemental Wolf. The one that has, enchantment spells have Cascade, so keep that in mind. Enchantment spells you cast from your hand have Cascade, I should say. It's also a 6/6 Trampler, which for 5 mana is nothing to, be upset about. Regardless, this one is, in my opinion, even if it's full upgraded version, the weakest out of all the Precons. It's a test and champion. Let's just talk about some cards that you could upgrade this with, and some good budget ones too. Whenever enchantment enters the battlefield under control, you get a counter on it, you draw a card. Again, that is enter the battlefield, which is great because you're just going to be cascading. You get another enchantment, get it into play. You're going to have a lot of enchantments to get a lot of card value out of this. So yeah, Constellation cards can be incredible with this. Edelai Blossoms, whenever this or another enchantment enters the battlefield under control, draw a card. So yeah, a lot of card advantage to be had with this. Nylea's Colossus, whenever it or other enchantment enters the battlefield under control, double target creature's power and on turn. You just need 2 enchantments to enter the battlefield under control, which is incredibly easy. You can literally just cast one, cascade into another one. All of a sudden, your commander is a 24 power and toughness creature that is swinging through to take anyone out with one shot, essentially. So, and yeah, that can get obviously a lot more ridiculous if you get more enchantments. Next up, Composer of Spring. Enchantment enters the battlefield to control. You may put a land card from your hand on the battlefield tapped. If you control 6 or more enchantments, instead you may put a creature or land card from your hand on the battlefield tapped. Nice. You're going to be able to get all that value from this. Next up, Enchantress Presence. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. Again, another cast trigger, which is great when working with Cascade too. So a lot of value to be had with like an Enchantress style approach to this commander. Wild Growth. Obviously, if you're focusing on enchantments, a lot of low to the ground enchantments can be very helpful as well because you're just cascading down and down and down. And all of a sudden, you're hitting ones at 1 like this, and it's still helping you ramp. So yeah, getting a lot of mana can help you ramp. Again, this commander it's going to take a little bit more time to really get online compared to some of the other ones. So that's probably why, in my opinion, again, it is finishing at 4th. That being said, yeah, for old ground, you got a lot of options. Overgrowth, very, very, very good. Enters battlefield, you attach to a land, all of a sudden that land can tap for additional 2. So yeah, it's an absurd amount of ramp to be able to get. And of course, when it comes to other like low to the ground enchantments that you can hit off of, again, you're just like 2-mana enchantments, Burgeoning. When your opponent plays a land, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, or Exploration. You punish a land each your turn, so you can, once you get things going, once you get that commander in play, once you get casting things, once you get hitting things, you get a lot of value throughout the game. That being said, I would still say, again, with the amount of time it takes to build up that value, it's going to be finishing in 4th place. And compared to some other commanders, it's just not quite there. So yes, when it comes to Animated Army, you are, 4th, unfortunately, in commander power potential and in upgradability, in my opinion. Next up, Ms. Bumbleflower. This one might surprise you. Again, I said that we should switch over to Mr. Foxglove when it comes to like out of the box, but when it comes to the upgradability power potential, we're going at 3rd place with this one. Ms. Bumbleflower from Peace Offering is going to be the commander that I personally think full upgraded deck, just changing around maybe what the focus of the deck is instead of being group hug, you can win with this quite easily. So again, whenever you cast a spell, target opponent draws a card. You also, get to draw 2 cards if the second time it's resolved. That's nice. But most importantly, again, the literally most important thing, sounds like a downside, it's actually an upside. Forcing an opponent to draw a card can be an incredibly deadly thing. That's why, like, Feldergriff, like one of my favorite group hug type commanders, I like to call it political control because I like to just give players hippos, which is the only thing that you can force them to do, essentially. I think gain life too, but whatever. But you can't force them to draw cards, which is the blue activation on Feldergriff. This forces card draw, meaning that you can mill players out, and there's a ton of ways to do it. So essentially, yeah, the upgraded version of this deck, in my opinion, would be basically full-on combo. You are literally just looking for a way to cast spells infinitely, and by doing so, you mill all your opponents out. Also, this is a commander that can just give you value throughout the game. Be like, trying to set yourself up, you're like, okay, cast 2 spells on this turn, cast 2 spells on that turn, cast 2 spells on that turn. Just all of a sudden, draw a ton of cards with this. Again, like cantrip, 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 tutor, whatever you need to do it. Get to cards like Allurant. A very weird old card. Enchantment for 4 mana. Basically, any player can play a creature card, can cast a creature spell with mana value 3 or less at, they have flash, I guess, at instant speed without paying its mana cost. It's worded a different way now. Basically, if you have a creature spell in your hand, you can cast it for free if it costs 3 or less, and you can cast it for free and at instant speed. So, yeah, you just need to do that, plus a Shrieking Drake. Enters the battlefield, return a creature control back to its owner's hand. That can be this. You can have this be cast Enter the battlefield, return this back to your hand. Cast it again, and again, and again, and again, forcing each of your opponents to draw their entire libraries, and then one extra card, and they each lose. Again, it literally just takes a 2-card combination, and all of a sudden, your opponents are gone with this. And there's a lot of different ones. You could get White Wayne Line instead. Enters battlefield, bounce a creature back to its owner's hand. Again, this costs 2 or 3 or less, so this would also be one you can consider. There's other ones too. That being said, another avenue for victory, Enduring Renewal. Another very weird card. Essentially, yeah, I guess if you would draw a creature card from your library, discard it, but whenever a creature goes in a grave from play, you get that creature back in its owner's hand, or into your hand. So basically, hey, if a creature dies, it comes back to the hand of the owner. So all of a sudden, you can just play like a card like Uggin's Conjurant. It enters with X counters on it. If you pay 0 into that, it enters with 0 counters on it. It's a 0/0. It's going to die. So you just cast this again and again and again and again, and you mill everyone out and win. Next up, Baral's Expertise. This is a very weird one. Bounce 3 artifacts, send our creatures back to our hands. That's nice. Up to 3. Up to 3 is very important with that. You may cast a spell with mana value 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. That's actually the most important thing because we got Narameha Master Wizard, a 3/3 human wizard for 4 mana with flash. Enters battlefield, copy target in sorcery spell you control. Choose new targets for the copy. Basically, you are going to be casting Narameha, essentially targeting Baral's Expertise while it's on the stack. Then you're going to be copying it, bouncing it back to your hand, and then all of a sudden recasting it from your hand for free again and again and again and again and again. So you have infinite cast, and again, you win. Primal Prayers. Enters battlefield, you get 2 energy counters. Whenever you cast creature spells with mana value 3 or less by paying, you may cast them with 3 or less by paying energy rather than paying their mana cost. If a spell cast this way, you may cast the flash. Basically, a new Alurin, but with energy. Works with Greenbelt Rampager. Enters the battlefield, you may pay green, or not green. You pay energy. If you can't return it to its owner's hand, and you get an energy. Essentially, you just play this for free. You get an energy. You play it for energy. You get it for free every single time. So there are a lot of like 2-card combinations. You also have some great tutors. Enlightened Tutor. Search life for an artifact or enchantment. Reveal, put it on top. There you go. There's half. Worldly Tutor. Search life for a creature card. Reveal, put it on top. You got other ones as well that can help you win with this kind of a commander. But again, Ms. Bumbleflower might not seem like a lot. It might seem like it can only be like group hug. But this can just be a win condition. It can be a value engine until you get to the point where you just win. And yeah, when it's fully upgraded, I think that Ms. Bumbleflower is the direction I would go. Good enough for 3rd place. Next up, when it comes to Precons, we got Hazel of the Root Bloom. That's right, the Squirrel Away Precon goes down from 1 to 2. When it comes to full upgradability, in my opinion, it is a great commander, okay? You get a lot of value, and there's a lot of upgrades that you can add to the deck to get you even more value. I just think that there's another commander out there when it comes to full upgradability that can top this one. Parallel Lives, obviously a very good card with this commander. And in fact, we put 1 or more tokens on a battlefield control, it doubles that up. That's twice instead. Doubling season, basically exact same thing, but also when it comes to counters too, so keep that in mind. Any of those types of effects essentially can really help you out, obviously. Next up, Seedborn Muse. Untap all permanents you control during each of the player's untap step. That means that you're getting all your mana again every single turn. So yeah, untap all those tokens, untap all your lands. Get an absurd amount of mana on every single turn that you can. Speaking of every turn, Tendershoot Dryad, another upgrade to add into this deck as well. It was in one of the precons, but it wasn't in this one, actually. 2/2 Dryad with Ascend. At the beginning of each upkeep, make a 1/1 Sapperling. And also they get +2/+2 if you got the City's Blessing. The most important thing is, again, every single upkeep, not just your own, you're getting a Sapperling. So that's 4 tokens. That's basically 4 extra mana for this commander. Tamer Sabertooth, another card to consider. Another potential combo piece you could consider with this kind of a commander. 1 green, bounce our creature control back to its owner's hand. This gets indestructible. Great Oak Guardian enters the battlefield. Creatures target player controls get +2/+2 until turn. Untap them. Yeah, basically, this is a combo where, again, if your commander is tapping for enough mana, which it easily can, you all of a sudden are going to be playing it again. Untapping all your creature tokens, doing it again and again and again and again. You're limited based on, life, essentially, because you have to pay 2 life every single time. But that might not matter. You might have a way to gain life, or you have a way to punish your opponents with enough mana, like Torment of Hellfire. Repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life, unless the player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards that card. So yeah, you can do some really good, like, high-end finishers with this commander as well when it comes to fully upgrading it. I do believe that Hazel is definitely the better commander of the 2 from the Precon when it comes to the base version as well as the fully upgraded version. And yes, you can definitely do some very powerful things. But I think Swirl Away is still at 2nd place when it comes to full upgradability. When it comes to 1st place, though, I think Zinnia Valley's Voice actually takes the cake when it comes to that, because there are some disgusting things that you can do with this one. Again, this one does get +X with 0x the number of other creature control, base power 1. I think that's nice. I don't think that's the focus of this commander deck, though. When it comes to being fully upgraded, you really want to use and abuse, basically just, paying 2 extra mana to copy your creature. Who cares if it's a 1/1? You get whatever triggered abilities it has, you get whatever ETB it might have, you get a lot of things out of that. And of course, you also have access to, just like green does, token, doublers, and even a tripler. Annoy Procession, basically you double up your tokens. This is basically parallel lives in white. So yeah, being able to just pay an extra 2 for that offspring on a really good creature, getting 1 extra copy of it, and then getting another extra copy of it, things get out of control very quickly with this low to the ground commander. Or talk deep at Foundation. If one of our creature tokens we create or control, 3 times that many of those tokens are created instead. That means that 1 creature spell equals 4 creatures essentially. So yeah, you can do some really crazy things just by offspringing for 2. Esper Sentinel, some low to the ground, crazy good creatures that you're like, yeah, I'll get some extra copies of that. A 1/1 human soldier for a single mana. Again, 3 mana in total to offspring this. Whenever opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless they pay X, Rex X Esper Sentinel's power. Good luck to them paying all that mana. Yeah, they're not going to. And so essentially you're going to get an absurd amount of cards drawn from this. Or how about the incredibly broken Dockside Extortionist? 1/2 Goblin Pirate for 2 mana in red. Enters, create X treasure tokens for X the number of artifacts and champions your opponents control. Oh my goodness. I mean, this thing's just broken on its own, but being able to just pay 2 extra mana, make an extra copy of it, get that ETB again, giant ritual effects, absolutely absurd, especially if you got those like token doublers. Phantasmal Image, a very low to the ground clone that essentially can, again, copy any of those creatures. So if you have other triggered abilities, if you have other ETBs, you're getting those, and then some, again, with the copy of that as well. Panharmonicon, of course, you can take advantage of, too. Creature entering the battlefield essentially doubles up its ETBs. So, again, paying the extra 2 mana not only gets you an extra creature, but again, with those ETBs like Dockside, now you're getting basically 4 ETBs in total with the original, the extra creature, as well as the extra ETBs with this. And also one of my favorite cards of all time, Wizards Reprint It, Song of the World Soul, $6 right now. Whenever you cast spell Populate, things get obviously out of control with this, because once you're making those token copies of creatures, you can do some disgusting things by populating, making extra copies of them. So overall, yeah, I would say Zinnia Valley's Voice, definitely, in my opinion, takes the cake when it comes to upgrade potential and the disgusting things that you can do with it. I'd even talk about, like, if you really wanted to and your playgroup's okay with it, stacks, hate bears. Think about all those kinds of strategy you could utilize with this kind of a commander and do some disgusting things by getting extra copies of those types of creatures. You can really lock down your opponents in absolutely no time. I'm not saying you should build in that way and it's already powerful without building in that way, but yeah, this one, in my opinion, finishes at first place in terms of upgradability. Next up, when it comes to new card potential, I'm going to be talking about, well, Squirreled Away first, actually. The 4th place finish for Squirreled Away when it comes to the potential for the new cards in that precon outside of the commanders, the one specific to that precon. How applicable are they to other strategies and other decks? In 4th place might be giving it away that not all that applicable from Squirreled Away. Gorman's talent is about making artifacts into foods, some life gain things too, but like you kind of have to build it up to actually get there. So yeah, not all that applicable. Sword of the Squeak, incredibly specific in what it wants to do. If you've got creatures with base power toughness 1, cool. If not, not a good card at all. Scurry of Swirls, this one has Myriad, which is interesting. That being said, there's only so many decks that really want to take advantage of that and take advantage of swinging, and you're still going to be put in danger to do so. Moving on, Hazel's Brewmaster enters or attacks, eggs up to 1 target card from a graveyard to make a food, and then food you control all activated abilities and powers of all creatures, and abilities of all creatures with the exiled with Hazel Brewmaster. This one, again, is pretty specific on what it wants to do. You have to throw it into danger to actually get benefits out of it. If you have a food deck, great. If you don't, probably not. Insatiable Frugivore enters, create a food token, exile 3 cards from graveyard to repeat this process. You can also sacrifice that to pump creatures. You need a graveyard to do so. If you've got a self-mill deck, maybe, but maybe not. Brewcast Apprenticeship. This one is flexible, but the modes that it give you are, counters, gives you copies of creature tokens, gives you squirrels, makes opponents sacrifice non-token artifacts. There are better flexible cards out there than this one. Moonstone Uologist. This one says creature opponent controls dies, you make a blood token, sacrifice an artifact, get a counter on it, you gain 1 life. More specific to life gain strategies, sacrifice strategies. Not all that applicable to most decks out there. Stormyard Massacre. This one's incredibly specific, basically like a one-sided board wipe for decks that are insects, rats, spiders, or squirrels. If you're not in those, you probably aren't going to be using this ever. So yeah, when it comes to the actual cards within the deck, I'd say that For new card potential, for Squirreled Away, it has the least amount of applicability to other types of decks out there with the cards that you have. They're very specific to that deck. Next up, when it comes to the second place finish, second place from worst, so third place finish, we've got Peace Offering. Just want to make sure. Peace Offering, again, has some pretty specific cards, not quite as specific in my opinion as Squirreled Away. Bloomburrow Apothecary, I mean, can do some fun things, essentially, like, hey, you can take opponents out with poison counters. That being said, unless you're like in ways to sacrifice, make opponents sacrifice non-creature tokens, and unless you're in Proliferate or just Infect in general, it's not really that good of a card. Communal Brewing, you're giving your opponents benefits potentially with this. It could be good in a +1 counter strategy specifically, but it doesn't have all that applicability. Steelbird Champion has more applicability, I would say. You can offspring this, which is nice, and it says whenever opponent casts a non-creature spell, you get a counter on this creature. So this and the other token can get massive throughout the game, so there's a little more applicability than the other cards I've talked about so far. Template Bunnies can be very terrible. Draw a card and create a 1/1. If your opponents do as well, you get to do that again, essentially for each opponent who did. But essentially, yeah, you might not be able to be convincing of them to do that. So yeah, this is more so like a group hug type card in my opinion. Fisher's Talent, beginning of your upkeep, you get to get a fish. And then you can also get a 3/3, which then you get a 8/8, basically, if you would create all those. So essentially, yeah, you can build it throughout the game, but if you don't have ways to move to the top of your library to make sure that there are lands on top, you're probably not going to get a lot of value out of this, and it's pretty expensive to do all of this. 20 Toad. It's an extra win condition. It does take some building up to actually get there, so for specific decks that want to get counters on things or draw things, sure. Outside of that, not so much. Octomancer, you're giving an opponent an octopus. Usually most decks don't want to do that. I think it's spicy and fun, but yeah, you also get an octopus yourself and other tokens too, so there's value to be had, but it's pretty specific in what it wants to do. And then Perch Protection. This one is a card that I'd recommend just not playing. I mean, this a card depends on the deck. It is kind of group huggy, but it's kind of king-makey in a way. You give an extra turn to someone. Usually that's a very bad thing. You do get a lot of value yourself, like Teferi's Protection basically, +4 2/2 birds. That being said, you are granting next turn. It's a pretty specific card for what decks want to do. So I'd say, again, when it comes to this, Peace Offering is in third place. We've got Animated Army at second place. First up, Alchemist Talent. Treasure tokens. They're in a lot of decks out there. You can have your treasures tapped, add 2, and then also get a lot of extra, damage to your opponents too. So yeah, that can apply to a good amount of decks out there. Next up, Brightcap Badger. Make some saplings. They can tap for mana. It's pretty specific, but it does have like a, hey, at the beginning of your end step, make a 1/1, which can tap for mana. So more decks for like token generation, more decks for going wide, can consider that as well. Next up, Evercoat Ursine, just a good powerful creature, 6/5 Trampler for 5 mana, but also Hideaway 3, so some value there when this does get through. So there is value for that like Power Matters type strategy and also casting from exile. Next up, Prosperous Bandit. This one's pretty specific. You gotta have ways to get through. You have gotta have ways to pump it to actually get treasure tokens out of it, really. Next up, Pyreswipe Hawk. Again, pretty specific. You have to have high mana value artifacts to actually care about this card for the most part. So yeah, you can steal artifacts too, but for the most part, you need to be in a high mana value artifact deck. Next up, Rolling Hamsphere. This one can be go wide strategy, essentially. +1 for each hamster you control. Attacks, you make 3 hamsters, and deals X damage, X number of hamsters you control. Could be in a vehicle deck, but again, pretty specific. But also, like, go wide, maybe. It's a decent amount of mana. Thickest in the Thicket. This might be the most applicable card. Enters, put X counters on target creature for X that creature's power. Basically, double up a creature's power, which is huge. On top of that, at the beginning of your end step, draw 2 cards. You control the creature the highest or type for the highest power. 2 card draw is pretty good for an enchantment at 5 mana. And then there's Trail Tracker Scout. Tap for 1 mana of any color. A 1/3. Dork for 2 mana. When you expend 8, return target permanent card from your grave to your hand. There's a lot of dorks at 2 mana. This one just gives you extra value throughout the game just by, casting things. So decently applicable to decks that want to utilize mana dorks. And at first place, we have Family Matters, so 1 point to them. Again, less points is better. So Family Matters, when it comes to new card potential, first place. Fortune Teller's Talent, look at the top card of your library anytime. That is applicable to a decent amount of decks out there. When it comes to like knowing what you're going to be drawing, that can be quite nice. Even if you just have like a fetch land in play, you can be like, I don't like that. I'll crack this, shuffle, and hope I get something better. As long as you cast a spell that you may play cards at the top of your library, kind of like build your own future site, that's also just a nice amount of value there. Spells you cast from anywhere in your hand cost 2 less. That can help with this. It can also help with like other strategies out there too, like casting things from exile or whatnot. So yes, this is one that can be decently applicable. Next up, maybe the most applicable to, a good amount of decks out there. A Gate Instigator, Offspring for basically 2. Another creature enters, this creature will 1 damage each opponent. Basically an Impact Tremors that you can get a second Impact Tremors by paying 2 extra. So yeah, that's going to see a good amount of play. Jacked Rabbit, a big creature. Ravenous, enters with X counters on. If X is 5 more, draw a card. When it enters, an attack create a number 1/1 equal to its power. So this can apply to X spell decks, can also apply to go wide strategies, big creature strategies, etc. Polywog Prodigy, this can be a great draw engine for you. Can evolve so it can get bigger throughout the game. Whatever opponent casts a non-creature spell with mana value less than its power, draw a card. Doesn't have a limiting factor on that, like once a turn. So yeah, once this gets going, it can draw you a ton of cards, and there's a decent amount of decks out there that can utilize it. Rapid Augmenter, pretty specific. Another creature control at base power 1 enters, gains haste till turn. Whenever another creature enters, if it wasn't cast, you get a counter on this, can't be blocked that turn. Again, pretty specific on what it wants to do. Murmuration? I can never know how to say that. Birds you control get +1 and have vigilance. At the beginning of your end step, for each spell you've cast this turn, you make a 1/2 Bluebird creature token with flying named Stormcrow. Basically you're making 2-3 birds for the amount of spells you cast in your turn. This can be great for storm decks, obviously, but even if you're just getting like 2 birds out of this in a turn, that can be very, very good. So yes, that's quite nice. Calamity of Cinders, a very interesting one. Deals 6 damage to each untapped creature, and you can convoke it out, so you can essentially make it into a one-sided board wipe, essentially. So this can apply to a decent amount of decks that might want to utilize a damage-based board wipe. So again, Family Matters at 1. Yeah, I think it's got a good amount of potential use of these cards for other types of strategies out there. It's not incredibly specific to what the deck wants to do. But now let's move on to the next category with, well, let me double check. Reprint value. That's also a thing that players care about when it comes to precons. $62.08. That's gonna for worst place. Sorry, Family Matters. Yeah, you got 4 points here. Helm of the Host is the most expensive card out of the precon when it comes to the reprints themselves, $12.10. I'm not talking about the new card prices because those fluctuate a ton until the actual precon comes out a little bit after, but we know basically the base value of these precon cards. Helm of the Host. This is a card that is $12.10. It applies to a lot of commander decks out there that want to make copies of things. Luminous Broodmoth, a good one at $9 as well. Creatures die, they come back with flying. Nice. Combat Celebrant could be a potential combo card, essentially, to get you infinite combats, but just getting 1 extra combat is quite nice. $5.19. Curiosity Craft works really well with tokens, essentially drawing you a lot of cards. And they've got some lands as well, Cascade Bluff. So when it comes to, again, the actual reprint value, they drop off quite quickly. There's like 4 or so cards that are decently priced, and then after that, not so much. So when it comes to reprint value, you're not getting all that much when it comes to Family Matters. Moving on. Next up, moving on to third place at $73.72. Colonian Hydra is leading it for Peace Offering, $10.61. Tameo Field Researcher drops down all the way down to $4.77. In an offer you can't refuse, a very good counterspell in Commander. Basically exchanging, 1 mana to counter a non-creature spell to give someone 2 treasures. That's very good. And then all of a sudden, this is at $4.10. After that, it drops down even further. There really aren't that many great reprints. It comes to like high-end ones. There's 1. Outside of that, it's pretty low. Moving on to our next one with Animated Army. We move up in price quite a bit with the reprint value. So this one's coming in at second place, $92.62. Tender Shoot Dryad at $10. Also around $10, Greater Good, a great sacrifice value engine for you, drawing a lot of cards. Grothama All Devouring somehow is $9. Interesting. Lotus Cobra. Very applicable card to landfall synergies or just like decks that have a decent amount of fetch lands in them as well. Kodama the E3 as well, good amount of value. Bootlegger Stash, you can see there's a lot more in this before it actually drops down because a lot of the cards are around like, when it comes to the high end, like $4 at least and going up to $10. And then, yeah, around $92 is what our price value is for this one. But finally, at first place, Squirreled Away. This one has the highest print value out of everything, $116.39 according to Moxfield. When it comes to the actual reprints, Salt in Half, instant for 3 mana, destroy a creature, and basically split it in 2. That is a combo card. It's also a high value card as well. So yeah, this is a card that can be great. Swarmyard. This one's a really old card that helps you with insects, rats, squirrels, or spiders. So these kind of cards are in this deck. So yeah, a good amount of value. We got Chatterfang as well at $10. Beldros also at $10. Toski at $6. Skullclamp at $5. Second Harvest also at $5. Maskwood Nexus at $4. Beastmaster at $3. So finally just dropping down to that like $4 benchmark. There's a lot of cards in there that are higher in price, which maybe leads us to our next one. But yeah, Squirreled Away coming in at first place, Animated Army coming in at second place, Peace Offering at third, and Family Matters at 4. And now for our last category, which is pretty straightforward and pretty quick. What is the actual price of the Precon? How does it stack up against the other ones? Coming in at 4th place, we've got Squirreled Away at $71.96. This one is, I'm going to spoil a little bit, substantially higher than the other ones. So although it gets 4 points with this category, maybe it should get a little bit more even because it's so much more expensive. Next up, we've got Animated Army coming in at $41.70. I told you it was a lot more. Yeah, $41.70, quite the drop down. So this one's good enough for 3rd place. When it comes to 2nd place, not too much further down than that, $39.27 with Peace Offering. And at 1st place, we've got, well, Family Matters coming at $39.10. So when it comes to the actual, reprints, it comes to all these other things, maybe those come into factor when it comes to the actual price of these cards, or maybe people just like squirrels and that's why the squirrel one is the most expensive. So with this incredibly scientific process completed, let's go back through our notes and see, adding everything up, where we're at. So overall, again, if you finish 4th place in a category, you got 4 points. You want the least amount of points in this experiment. So in 4th place at 15 points in total, we've got Animated Army. This, according to this incredibly scientific process, would be the least recommended Precon to go out and get. When it comes to 3rd place, we've got Peace Offering coming in at 13 points in total. When it comes to 2nd place, we've got Squirreled Away coming in at 12 points in total, which might surprise some people because usually people are like, oh, well, the most expensive one's got the best things in it, it's the most powerful. In this scientific process, incredibly scientific process, apparently not, because coming in at 1st place at 10 points is Family Matters. Family Matters apparently is, in my opinion, the best Bloomburrow Precon to pick up. Again, when it comes to Precons, go with your gut. Pick up the one that you want. Like, if you just want to get one to play, great. If you're looking for one with, the most reprint value, pick the one that has that. The one with the lowest price, go for that one. When it comes to the actual cards in it, the new cards, go for that one. Use whatever you want to use from this episode, but overall, my recommendation would be apparently Family Matters, which I guess makes sense for the way I'd probably build it and that kind of stuff as well, and its price and all the things with it. So, yeah, now when this episode coming to a close, let me know your thoughts are on it. Let me know your thoughts are on these Precons. Which one are you most excited about? And of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.